Welcome back, everyone. We are absolutely thrilled that Aftab is joining us tonight. He's probably been a member for quite a number of years, and I think this may be the first time we've had the pleasure of him teaching for us for the Tikkun Leil Shavuot. For those of you who don't know him, this, I'm sure, is going to be a delight. He's the president of Meridian University, which offers degree and professional programs globally, emphasizing the power of transformative learning. He's a sociologist, psychologist, developmentalist, and futurist in his spare time. He was raised in Pakistan, India, Hawaii, and Turkey, educated at M.I.T, Harvard, and Brandeis. His publications have addressed the topics of transformative learning, dialogic capability, developmental power, cultural leadership, civil society, generative entrepreneurship, and the power of imagination. And tonight he will be sharing his views on how goodness reveals itself. We're thrilled to have you with us, Aftab.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm happy to be here and see some people I haven't seen in years. Like you, in some years, Sherry, and hello, Robin, longest with you. Sheridan is off video. I see some other familiar names. I see Robin. So I'm glad to be here and feel the bonds across the times. So it's still time to go to the other one, because I won't be answering the question. And my excuse is that this is not an answerable question. How does goodness reveal itself? And I would likely intimate why this question is not answerable. But we can get there. What comes first, though, is in order to reveal itself, goodness would have to exist. And so we could begin there. I should mention that I'm on my iPad instead of my computer. And that's because I'm working in Hungary. It's 6 a.m. in the morning. And this is the position of the iPad right now. So in the description that Barbara asked for, I began with remembering this Van Morrison line, which goes, "I forgot that love exists." And that line made an impression on me on a day early in the morning, also at a little Iranian Persian cafe in Berkeley, when I think I was in a place of forgetting that love exists. And I saw an interaction between the person who was behind the counter and the person who was delivering the pita bread. And their interaction reminded me that love exists. They had a very brief interaction where they were both, it seemed to me, feeling awkward, but nevertheless, as they reached across their awkwardness to connect with each other, I had the experience that love exists. And that what was between them was a type of love. So, um, of course, or maybe not so of course, depending on the day, love and goodness are connected. This we know, or know most of the time. And so while this question of how goodness reveals itself is not answerable, it's inquirable. And I'm hoping that we can do some of this inquiring together. Beginning with, how do we know goodness exists? So I gave a time in my life when there was this moment of knowing that love exists. And I'm inviting you now to, and I assume this is okay, Barbara, to either come off the mic, or if Barbara will let people off the mic, to maybe even to write into chat. Is that, I don't know if in Zoom teaching, I often rely a lot on people contributing through chat. But the invitation is through sending a message in chat or just coming off mic and saying a sentence or two about a time when you had the sense, you knew that goodness actually exists.
You're waiting for us to speak?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sitting in my living room looking at a painting my grandmother made of her backyard, so to speak, in the country in Westport, Connecticut. And I got to spend part of my 5th summer there. And just being with her has changed my life then and continues to. And I get to look at the beauty that she transferred to the canvas. That means a great deal to me, but the goodness of her is what comes through. I mean, it just popped right in when you asked the question.
Mm-hmm.
Just the feeling that I had of being cared for unconditionally at a time when I really needed it. And everything around her was goodness. Everything, the garden, the backyard, the house, the food, everything. So.
And Robin, I'm noting your.
It's a feeling.
Yes, it is a feeling, and we are moved. We are moved by goodness sometimes. Just and you said the words. It just popped in. It just popped in into your mind, your heart. That example of the presence of goodness.
It takes a question.
There's another way we could respond as well, which is, do you recall a time when you forgot that goodness exists and were reminded? It's a particular kind of painful forgetfulness that can happen. Sometimes it's fatigue is enough. Let's take a look at some of what people have said in chat.
And Ruth has something to say.
Please, Ruth.
Thank you for joining us from Hungary. How exciting. Both my children have infants now. My daughter lives in New York and has a very high-powered job at NBC as a photography editor, and my son in LA as an electronic musician, and they both have babies now. And I see the goodness that I was a very devoted parent, and like I told them, we all make mistakes, but we do the best job we know how as parents. And our parents made mistakes. We'll make mistakes, you'll make mistakes, but you just do the best job you know how, and you love your children, and you feed them physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and they will come out as whole human beings. And I see them now parenting, and they're wonderful parents, very clear about their boundaries, but very loving. And I just feel so grateful. And I see that goodness that exists in them and in their parenting and in their relationships with their partners. And I just think it's so beautiful to witness.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruth, for that description. So not only does goodness exist, it is transmissible.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Transmissible moment to moment, instantaneously, and across the generations.
And I just wanted to add, I had wonderful parents, and I think that made such a difference in my life. And so that then I could transfer it to them also. And so I think it's just beautiful. Yeah, that the goodness is transmitted. And I feel lucky that I have that in my life, in their life. Yeah.
Yeah. So if goodness exists and it's transmittable, then we could ask ourselves, how is it receivable? If from somewhere, some direction, perhaps all directions, it's actually coming towards us, in what way, in what place, in what state might we receive it? And so we can approach the question around revealing or revelation in that sense of, in that limited way of approaching revelation as when something shows itself, its nature, its presence, because we are blessed to be able to receive it at that time. And again, with the analogy with love, that there are times when we struggle to receive love. This is a not so unfamiliar experience. We are also sometimes unable to receive goodness, even as it knocks at the door, in any of its forms. So one little story pops to mind. A prospective student goes to the lute teacher for lessons in playing the lute and asks, what is the tuition? And the lute teacher responds by saying, well, it's 60 for the first month of lessons. And then after that, it's 30 for the subsequent months. And the prospective student responds by saying, very well, then I will begin with the second month. So, and so the truth and the humor in this little story is that to receive the lessons, that first month is necessary. And but our eager and frugal student does not recognize this yet, that the first month is necessary to receive those lessons. And it appears that goodness sets some requirements as well. So there's some tuition involved in being in a place to receive, so that it can reveal itself. And then the question is also, well, is the lute teacher for real? Is this a real lute teacher? And shifting back to goodness, we can also ask the question, if goodness exists, are there forms of it that are real, and then there are also imitations? Like gold exists, but we also know that imitation gold exists. So let's say watching a movie or watching some interaction for real, we're moved by what's happening between two people, and it moves us. And perhaps we might, in that moment, have some doubt about, are these people who are interacting, are they being real with each other? Is this actually an authentic interaction? Am I being moved by something real? And therefore, if I'm being moved by the goodness in this interaction, is it for real? So, one insight that I will share and see how it aligns or doesn't align with your own lived experience. And that insight for me has been that there are barriers to goodness revealing itself. And one of those barriers is imitation goodness. Barbara, do you have your digital hand up intentionally? And if so, please feel free. And now you're...
I wanted to share an experience that I actually shared with 24 other people, plus Reb Irwin, when we were in Israel. And the group bonded in ways that I don't think any of us could have predicted. But there was an especially meaningful experience in a tiny little church in the round in the town of Bethlehem. And when we walked in, there were a group of people singing. We believed that they were Koreans and Christian, and they were singing Gloria. And Reb Irwin had been alerted that this church had wonderful acoustics, and so what a surprise, he had his guitar. And as the group filtered into this area in the round and joined them, many of us knowing the lyrics and wanting to be part of this pretty profound experience with the light literally coming down upon us. And then at a point, that group left and we moved into that church in the round. It was quite small. And we started singing the song that we started with tonight, and your people will be my people, which is from the book of Ruth, which felt so appropriate to us because we had met people throughout the political and religious spectrum in that time we'd been there. And that sense of goodness, but also the sense that for so very many of us, our hearts had been cracked open in the process. And I think that's some of what made it possible for us to feel that goodness. And when we stopped singing, a man from the next group coming in noticed that I was sitting a bit behind people and I had been crying. And he just kneeled next to me and said, "God bless you, and especially you."
Sure.
And that sense of being so gotten in a space that was dedicated to being aware of the good in the world. And I think it was the fact that we were all in that space, and others like Carol, who were in the room with me, could verify their own sense of it. But there was something very special created there. It was the ability to be open, and the ability to be touched by others. So for me, that was kind of the high point of the trip.
Yeah, that moment. Thank you, Barbara. The heartbreaking presence of goodness.
Yeah.
And in what state do we become responsive in that way? So today, perhaps partly because I'm quite underslept, just the words, Barbara, when you uttered, "Your people will be my people," was enough for a flutter in my chest. Just those words. And then when the man comes over and says, "Especially you," and personalizes it so much. So, yeah, goodness reveals itself unexpectedly. There's something about the bird that just flies into the room and becomes noticeable in that moment. So, imitation goodness. We've had experiences with that. We've been asked to behave in ways that are good, and that's necessary and good. And there are times when our focus on behaving good gets in the way of goodness coming into the room, coming into our hearts. Just looking at this comment from Judy, Barbara's experience, it brought tears to many of us on the Israel trip. yeah, the tears as a signal, as a response to the presence of goodness. These sort of reassuring tears.
And Aftab, I don't know if you see on your iPad, if they're in Hungary, that others have commented prior to ending with Greg M, if that others did give some story, particularly Susan Levine and Laura and Noor.
I'm there now. Thanks. Yes, how people respond to us when we are in need. And thank you for that, Laura and Noor and Susan.
I would say that people have to be open to that, letting that goodness into their lives. I have several stories about this, but I'll just share a couple. I mean, I had a friend who was going through cancer treatments, who felt very strongly that this was private and she didn't want people gossiping about her around the water cooler. But as a result, she denied herself, the mitzvah of having people help her. And she went through this very isolated and alone. And then when her father passed away, she realized we held a shiva for her, and her community really turned out for her. And I think she shifted her thinking around this and realizing, that opening herself up to letting people help her was
Yes.
a wonderful thing. And I just had an interesting conversation with my father, who was asking me, well, if, my daughter, if I was ill, would I expect my daughter to come and help me? And I said, absolutely. I have no interest in living in isolation alone without community. And I would want my family and my daughter to be there. And he just had such a, of course, different response of being independent, and you do this on your own. And, so it was just very interesting of feeling like I don't want to have that experience of not having my family community around me when I'm going through something terrible, and to be open to the goodness that people want to help and be there for you. So.
Thank you, Laura. Listening to you reminded me of a line from Rumi, which is a short line, which goes, you don't know your majesty until you know your helplessness. And that the majesty of goodness reveals itself in the presence of need, in the presence of helplessness, in some very, very compelling ways. And if we are refusing need, dependence, helplessness, refusing in the sense of not being open to that place in our own lives, then experientially, goodness still exists, but experientially, it gets shut out. So, Robin, it was helpful you're bringing in the word performative. It's a good way, Robin, to speak about imitation goodness, that when we are performing goodness. And so what would be something different than performing goodness? And we could say participating in goodness. Judy, did you, yes.
So I wanted to just share briefly, part of what I do is I go into skilled nursing and assisted living as an advocate, and I'm just presenting, here I am, I'm here to help you. If there's something I can do, I'm available, and I get different kinds of responses, and it just depends on how open I can be and how open the person that I'm speaking to can be, because every interaction is pretty brief. And yet sometimes the response is, thank you so very much. And other times it's like, I don't know what you're here for. So, part of it is just communicating as clearly as I can who I am, what I'm about, and then it's up to that other person to be open or not. And it's really precious when, when the briefest of moment is just the result is I get to hold somebody's hand and say something that's encouraging to them. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Judy. I would take your hand right away. That's I don't think we've met, but your presence and the way your care got communicated just in this description has a very clear response of receptivity from me. And it reminds me, Judy, for us to take a little time here on embodiment, that if we're not performing goodness, if we're participating in goodness, which exists, we might say that goodness is more than human, and that when we are participating in it, allowing its presence to touch us, then we can embody it and be a better person through that embodiment of it. And so let's say that we have some desire to be a better person by the time Yom Kippur rolls around again, which it inevitably will. And so that was an interesting comment from Noor just now. Maybe that's a little longer than it should have. It is goodness, not our goodness. Yes. That therefore the participation in something that exists beyond the personal, beyond the human, we could also say prior to the personal, prior to the human, it exists. And not only does it exist, it is a force. Goodness exists, and it is a force like gravitation. It is there whether or not we are participating in it. And as we participate in it, it becomes us for periods of time. And we can be blessed by its presence in ways that we ourselves become a blessing. Our own presence becomes a blessing. So let's say we want to be more of a blessing by the next Yom Kippur. And if we have that desire, what would open us more to goodness revealing itself through us? And one theme already surfaced in a very clear way, which is to be in a place of need and helplessness and dependence. And what else comes to your mind? China Bear, if I'm saying that right?
It's China Bear.
China Bear.
Yes.
Oh.
I'm a little late to the party here, but I think I'm right here anyway. I don't know what was said before, but in response to what you just put out, I think really trying to stay connected with the divine and the Holy Blessed One at all times, as much as I can remember. I believe so much in that goodness that then I could emanate or bring that forth. And no matter what occurs, because obviously we have very little control over anything other than what we can do within ourselves, I've noticed less reactivity within myself if I can really stay connected to God and to emanate that, and also stay aware of that presence in everything. So that helps me stay kind of fused to this idea that really goodness is everywhere, and everything is good, no matter what, that it's not black and white. I mean, I'm really trying to live that idea that it's all for the good, and that's pretty new personally for me, trying to shift my paradigm as I grow up and get out of a victimhood stance little by little. So anyway, that's my 2 cents here.
Do you feel, I don't want to say, if you don't mind my asking, do you feel like you're a better person than you were a year or two ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I'm clearer. Yes, I've made a very strong effort to be a better person and to be more conscious and to, but I would even say that as the years go by,
And what is what happens as the years go by?
Well, I think as an elder at this point, I think really confronting the inevitability of death and confronting the losses in life, personally, family-wise, friends, just the bigger picture that things are really always changing and disappearing and there's cycles going on. And I think just I think a lot of it has to do with getting older and just seeing, life is very precious and it's quite short, and making a choice. How is it I want to be living? What do I want to fight about? What don't, do I want to fight? Is it worth it? Is it worth that precious breath? And just being more aware, of that there are always choices. And, it's a certain level of just awareness and staying attuned and awake. So it's a practice, and, I believe it's probably lifetimes, just, certainly beyond this one.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Your clarity, the clarity with which you are speaking, I find emboldening, and would like to then go take a few more steps down this ladder
Oh, good. Yes.
of exploring how does goodness reveal itself. And I'll get some help here by quoting the Baal Shem Tov, who many of you are likely to be familiar with, and where he has been translated to have said as follows: evil is the very throne of goodness. So I don't know whether he said this in Hebrew or Ukrainian or Russian, and how right the translation is. But let's say that the translation is right, that he actually said it, and that if we just trust his wisdom for the moment, feel into what is he pointing us to in saying evil is the very throne of goodness. What does that stir in you just hearing that? This quote has been important to me, but I'm careful where and when I say it. And
maybe I have something to add here.
Please, Dorothy.
I've been very prejudiced against evil, and even thought that it didn't really exist, that really goodness prevails on the whole, and that evil, people who believe in that want to believe in it, and it doesn't really exist. This is my prejudice. But since I've heard this from you just now, these thoughts came to me. I think we have something in us that knows what good is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to the tale of creation, of God's creation of the world, each day he says, and he saw that it was good. So this is a little reminder. Then I remember one time when I was a child, and I was talking to a boy in my class, and he wanted to influence me to agree with him. And he was being angry and mean to someone else. So I said, I want to be good. I felt the need, the want, the great desire. It was so beautiful, kind of holy to be in it, that I wanted to be good. And so I wasn't evil to him, and I wasn't critical. The desire for goodness remained inside of me, and I spoke with him in a kind of way. I said something to him, I don't remember exactly what. So then I feel like when we want to explore, then we should try to do goodness. And that's interesting too, because we don't want to be performative, as I just heard. We don't want to do it in a way that is prescribed. Visit the sick, yes, but then what? What are you going to do while you're there with that sick person? what goodness can you bring forth? And it's an interesting exercise because you may think that you're pushing something on somebody, or your goodness is yours to give to them. Or how can you evoke goodness that's equalizing, that's including? So these are kind of goodness studies that or actually brings us back to the throne of evil, evil being goodness. When you see that you're being pushy, or you're being this, or you're being that, some part of you that's good says, no, no, not that. That's where the throne of not goodness, we could call it evil, is. Thoughts for the day. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Dorothy, your phone is moving in interesting ways, and it just
Well, I'm trying to lie down while I'm talking, so that's what it is.
And
And
I'm
then
imagining you as a whirling dervish, who's
Oh, yeah.
and also your phrase "goodness studies." I thought, no,
Yeah.
I think universities wouldn't dare to create a department of goodness studies.
I like that, a department of goodness. Yeah.
So this is reminding me of another statement by another immensely good person, Elie Wiesel.
Oh, yes.
Who said that in our time, so statement's probably about 20, 30 years ago, said, in our time, not only, let me make sure I'm going to get this right. In our time, not only is the awareness of evil receded, but the idea of evil has been forgotten. So I'm hesitant to use the word new age culture, but I'm using it, and also the term bypassing or spiritual bypassing. But I'm bringing our attention to a cultural dynamic. And most of us live in Sonoma County or near Sonoma County, I would guess. And that part of our culture in California, even more so actually, I've been living part of the time in LA now. There is something that goes even beyond what Elie Wiesel said, which is that the idea of evil is not only forgotten, but forbidden. That the idea of evil is being forbidden. And if evil is the very throne of goodness, and our relating to evil is our, and here the words get very slippery, our relating to evil, our awareness of evil, are willing to touch it in some way, may be quite necessary to continue to become a better person. So this is a, a slippery and difficult threshold. How does goodness relate to evil? And how important it would be for us to gather the force of goodness, to engage evil when necessary. So just inviting, what's, to use Robin's term, what is popping in your mind and heart right now?
I'm wondering, this is Susan. Thank you, by the way. I've never met you before, but I've really enjoyed this evening and your thoughtfulness. And so I'm wondering, in this world of so much not goodness, how does goodness even pop in when you have what's going on in Ukraine, in Israel, in Sudan? I mean, I know everybody says each time period that we live in is the worst. You know, those living through the Spanish flu, that was the worst pandemic. Us living through COVID, that's the worst pandemic. But how do you account for the severity of evil that we're living through now, even though I know there's goodness everywhere, but it seems so often to be overshadowed by evil?
Thank you. Thank you for that, Susan, for that difficult thought. And I'm wondering if we might just take our last minute or two here just to sing together. Is that something one can do on Zoom? And
No.
If
no.
we can all be muted and you can sing.
No, and we can sing with you, just muted.
Well, can someone who trusts their singing more than I trust mine be the one?
What do you want to sing?
What was Barbara singing when in her moment that she shared with us, Barbara?
And your people are my people.
Yeah, and
Sheridan, is that one you're familiar with?
No, I'm sorry, it isn't.
We should bring Reb Irwin in.
Yeah, Erwin sang this with us today, some hours back in the opening ritual.
Yeah.
Barbara, you
I
look,
don't,
you look a little bit like Reb Keller.
it must be having spent that much time with him in Israel. I don't have the lyrics well in my head to do it, but to evoke the spirit of Ruth, who follows her mother-in-law and basically sees herself as human and part of the human tribe rather than a representative of her own birthright, and our sense of being able to break those boundaries in terms of how we see ourselves. So that's as close as I can come.
Thank you, Barbara. And I want to thank you all for your openness and mention that I'm just nourished by your good faces.
Aftab, do you teach other classes? I just was curious because I'd be very interested in taking a class with you or participating. Do you teach online or do you teach at the temple?
Thank you so much for offering that. Recently, I taught a couple of online courses that were open enrollment on dialogue. And So I hope that maybe you can come. That I might be doing that again in the fall, and how we can grow our dialogic capability, which is a way of becoming more open to others and their experience.
How can we find out about the classes?